Hi, my name is Mary Tesson, and I am the supervisor for Gifted and Talented for the Omaha Public Schools. Just a little background on how I got here. My undergraduate degree is in speech communication and theater. I have a master's in reading, and I also have 2 endorsements. One is in educational administration, and the second is in gifted education. I've been in my current position for 10 years, and I have loved just about every minute of it because working K-12 with teachers and with students has been really delightful. There's just so much to learn. I am constantly learning about gifted education, from our twice exceptional students to our gifted learners to our high ability students. There's just so much going on in the field. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some questions that I've been asked, and that'll kind of get us rolling. The first one is, what are the characteristics of a gifted and talented student? That's a big loaded question because there's a lot to say about gifted and talented. Let me start with some terms that I think will help us as we look at our gifted and talented students. High ability learner, and sometimes we use the term HAL student. This is a student that through some assessments that are given, usually they're like the California Achievement Test or Terra Nova, because they score high on their academics. Typically 96th percentile is what we use in the Omaha Public Schools. But we also look at some other scores like NISA and Acuity, and we look at a matrix of things so that we are looking at that student and their academics yearly. So a high ability student is someone that can change from year to year. It depends on how well they do on their academics. Now I will tell you that once we get that information at the beginning of the year, then we also look at how well students are doing in the classroom, because we know that students don't always test well. So some students will surface in the classroom and they're finishing their work, they're doing it accurately, and they're really looking for more of a challenge. So we also do what we call nominations. And that can be a teacher that nominates, it could be an administrator. Our gifted and talented facilitator might see a student that they feel could really benefit from having some challenging work. So all throughout the year we are looking for students to put into our large cast-wide net of gifted and talented students. So that's our high ability student. Now our talented student is someone who reaches some of the areas that are not considered sometimes gifted, and that is creativity, leadership, and the visual and performing arts. So a student that's really creative in their thinking, problem solving, or maybe they're really creative in art, or maybe they're good in music, or even sports. Those are our talented students. And then the final category is our gifted students. These are students that have been given a IQ test, like a Stanford Binet, or a Wechsler, or the RIAS, which is the Reynolds Reynolds Intellectual Test. And once that test is given, if they score in their composite a 130 or above, they are considered a gifted student. And once you're a gifted student and identified in that way, you always stay that way. It's not a yearly type of thing. So let's take a look at some characteristics of a gifted student. A gifted learner is someone that asks a lot of questions. They're very highly curious. They sometimes have some wild and silly ideas. They love working with adults, sometimes more than they do their peers. They only need maybe 1 or 2 repetitions when a teacher teaches something in class, and they get it very quickly. They tend to be very intense. Sometimes things like wars that are happening, or Hurricane Sandy, they will look at that as happening right here in Nebraska, and it will hit them very deeply. So they think about worldly things, and they're very intense about that. They're a really good guesser, and they like to create new things, and something maybe a little bit different than what the typical person would like to do. And they're really self-critical of themselves. So those are things that are of a gifted learner. And I think high ability students, some characteristics of that, are a student that really likes to learn, maybe reads a lot, really enjoys going above and beyond in the classroom. So when they're done learning something from the teacher, they want to know more. And so they might be going to websites, or wanting to do a project, or looking for a book that will teach them more about that subject. They tend to want to do very well in class, and maybe are self-critical of themselves when they don't do as well as they'd like to.
Good.
Are there specific strategies you recommend for working with gifted and talented students?
Oh, there are many strategies that will really help that gifted learner in the classroom, and even our high ability students. And I know this is not a new term, but differentiation in the classroom is so important for all of our students, whether they're special education, whether they're average students, high ability students, or for those gifted students. So if a teacher can master being able to assess students and being able to look what their strengths are, then they're really going to be able to help all learners. I've got a couple books here that I think are really excellent. This is one by Diane Heacock, and it's called Differentiating Instruction in the Regular Classroom. She does an excellent, very thorough job of helping the classroom teacher start by assessing students and then taking a look at what they're doing within groups, tiering assignments. That's a big one. So if you're teaching a lesson, you should be able to break it apart so that as you're explaining it in the class, as you see students that are already getting it, that you can fan off into something else within that same subject. So tiering assignments is really good. But this is an excellent book to use. Here's another one that I absolutely love, and it's called Differentiating the Curriculum for Gifted Learners. This one really breaks apart some real good strategies using things like depth and complexity, which is really good to get students to really dig deeper and go farther into a subject than what's just taught on the surface. So an excellent book for strategies there. And here's another one that I like, and this is for young gifted children. So this would be like from kindergarten to second grade. You know, and typically districts will say, well, we don't identify students until maybe third grade because that's when we have a standardized test. What we really like to in the Omaha Public Schools be looking at those kindergarten students, and as they start to pop up and surface in the classroom, we want to be giving them strategies as well too. So this is a great book for nurturing and identifying and challenging those students who are ages 4 to 9. And this is by Joan Smutney. So an excellent one for strategies as well.
How are gifted and talented elementary students served in OPS?
In the Omaha Public Schools, we have a gifted and talented facilitator that services each one of our 63 schools. The challenge is they're only there 1 day a week. So that differentiation in the classroom is very important, but we get the opportunity to provide materials and also to work in specialized instruction groups with students that are identified as being very high. So a teacher will show up at each building once a week, and they'll have a schedule where they pull students out of the classroom and they do things above and beyond. They're also great for contests and competitions. They also do a lot of projects with students, so that when they're not there and they're back in their classroom, as soon as they finish their work and the teacher has challenged them in an area, then she can say, or he can say, you know, let's go on and work on that project that you're doing. So we have a lot of variety of things that we can do, but we are a support to that classroom teacher, so we work really hard with them to make sure that we are giving students as much challenging work as they possibly can.
What are current issues regarding gifted and talented education at this time?
One of the big issues right now, and this is a Nebraska issue, we have early entrance to kindergarten, and we've always been able to send students to school when they're 4 if we give them some standardized assessments and an IQ test, and they do very well. Because, you know, some students at age 4, they're ready to go to school, and we don't like holding them back. But right now, what the state has done through a bill is they don't allow for those students that aren't in a window of being at a certain age to attend school. So that's been really troublesome to us, because we might only have a handful or maybe up to 10 4-year-olds that are ready to go to school, and right now we have to tell them they have to wait. So it is on my list to be talking to the state and seeing what we can do to have some kind of a clause in there for when a student is ready to start school and we've done all of our proper identification and we can show that they really are ready to go, that they should be able to. And what we found when we've done this early entrance to kindergarten is these students do very well. We do our homework and we want the best for them. And so when they do start school, we haven't had any that have fallen behind and they haven't shown that they're really ready to go at that time. The other big issue I think that's important, this kind of goes along with the early entrance to kindergarten, is acceleration. Making sure that if students are ready to move on, that we give them that opportunity. So for an example, if a student, let's say in 3rd grade, is just a really good reader, and they've done everything that they need to in that grade, subject accelerate them up to 4th grade and let them go up to 4th and do the reading there. Or in math, that's another area where our students have a lot of strength. If they're a really good math student, let them go up to the next grade and take their math class. Sometimes students are all around good, and so we need to full accelerate them to the next grade level. We have a process in place, we look at the whole child, but we give them that opportunity to move on.